Oh, it's Renee Baribeau, the practical shaman, and I'm here with Erika Schreck today. And I have a few housekeeping. It's morning. It's what a beautiful fire.
Thank you. Thank you.
We
Yes,
need
we had to
it.
bring fire into the elements today, right?
That's right. I've got all my fire lit, and I actually had to go clean the fire pit this morning because it was raining, and I needed dry for the closing fire tomorrow.
Yes.
And so many of you might have seen my little reel last night where I showed myself pouring the bath salts into the bath and getting ready to clear after a 12-hour day. Yes, it was a 12-hour day. So
Mhm.
saying that, I don't really think that you can catch up all on yesterday and watch every great thing that we have today, because we have quite a great lineup today as well. So you might want to go over to windwork.org and order the collection, because then you'll have it for the whole year. And trust me, there was things that I heard from Louise that I want to go back and listen to yesterday. And Christina Pratt last night had a few exercises I wanted to do, and Ace had a couple of drumming. I mean, and then I was just telling Erika, my biggest heart, my biggest cry, my biggest is to see the growth of the Windies and the Wind Clan who are presenting. And some of them came in without a presentation in mind years ago, and here they are teaching us how to make herbs. And Leora's story last night was so moving, because I remember what it was like when she came in, and to see somebody so fully embodied. Oh my God, I just got the chills again. So I want to honor all of the Windies who are stepping up. Erika has been through the program, but she had her own thing going on. So she's a great presenter in her own right. And we were just honored that she joined us over there. And also Michelle right after you. I mean, there's just a whole, I think Carrie's presenting. And I do want to I'm going to blow the wind whistle before we start. And then I also this is just kind of a quick reminder, because it's only 3 days this year, which I really like the new format this way a lot. And so I think we'll be doing that going forward. And next year we're entering to the age of Aquarius. So it's going to be a powerhouse. And what I learned from Louise yesterday, we're going into the time of air.
Mhm.
And for me, who wrote a book, that like, probably it was early, or in my mind it was early, because I'm going to be busy doing other things, but you have to have this book. And I don't say that because last night when Leora was reading from it, I'm there like, who wrote that? Who wrote that? I mean, and I only can believe that the wind spirits came in and wrote it. And then, Raven and Stephanie and, even Hay House, the editing, 14 versions through. But there was 14 versions through the editing process to get this book. It's kind of like, and I'm not saying this like in a braggart way. It's kind of like the Book of Ruins that's going to be on your shelf for a long, long time. Now the wind spirit cards are coming through. I don't know if you've seen any of those. It's like, it's taken me 6 years to actually get to the art. It's like we've been close a few times, but it was like other windies would call and say, no, that's not the wind that's talking to me. And I'm there like, and I had to honor that. And that same windy who said, oh, that's not the wind I know, is looking at these pictures saying, who's drawing these? This person knows the wind. And so if you haven't seen him, go over to the Practical Shaman. And today, because I'm traveling, my niece is getting married in Long Island on New Year's Eve. And one of the things that my shamanic work has given me back is my family.
Mhm.
And, when I started in like 2002, I thought they were from a different planet. What I realized, I was from the different planet. They were fine, and I just wasn't a part of it. And so my work has been reintegrating into my family system, my family of origin, and in a way that I love them for who they are. And they love me for who I am. And I've even done a despacho with them. And then my brother-in-law says, hey, do you know everything in that despacho came true? And so if you are estranged from your family, take it to the fire.
Mhm.
Bring it to the fire, because you know what? Life is short, and the people we love are the people we love. And, I lost my sister a couple years ago, and all of that. So I'm going to start with a wind whistle. And if you're interested, this is our new wind whistle maker, Daniel. He's the nephew of Gregorio, the son of Mario, who both passed during the years of COVID. And, I don't know about COVID, but I do know it's changed the way the world is. And places like this gathering are more important than ever.
Mhm.
So let's start with the wind whistling. And if you have never, we're working with Ilmarinen, the inventor wind. So you can reinvent yourself during this fire. And so let's call to Ilmarinen and re-bring it in for this day and light your candles. So we take a deep wind breath in to the count of 7. We hold it. We release anything that we've taken on at the fire that's not ours, because that happens. I take the salt bath. The second wind breath in, call into Ilmarinen to help you create from the ashes, from the fire, anything that you want to manifest. And then on that third wind breath in, I invite you to connect again with the group, strengthen this. I can always tell on day 2 that the fire starts to burn a little more evenly. The first night is so frenetic at the fire. I'm like, you think I'd get used to all of the crazy. Yesterday it was and today there seems to be people tending space all along. So be with us here and let's call into the winds. As I close my eyes, I see your candles all around the world. How beautiful. And I'm going to release anything in your candles, your fires that is not mine. Next, I'm going to call to Ilmarinen. I'm seeing a beautiful image of all of, like a pizza flipper, of all the things that you've added into that fire to manifest and create. Keep stoking those flames. And in this last breath, see yourself connecting to all the light in everyone's altars. Over 100 people have sent us their pictures of their altars. Connect to the light in each of those altars as we form a strong bond of the 1,600 people who are here with us in this fire. We know that. We know that wind. We know that old ancient wind. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Erika, and I've already taken enough of her time, so I'll let her kind of self-introduce as she goes. And we're really honored to have you here. And thank you so much for sending me those bath salts. And everyone, after the fire, order some. The new packaging is lovely. I love it. So thank
Glad
you.
you like it. Thank you so much. So my name is Erika Schreck, and I live in Boulder, Colorado in the United States. And I met Renee Baribeau through one of my teachers at that time, Sandra Ingerman. And I have been studying and practicing shamanic work and practices and building my skills for the last couple of decades. And yes, 6 years ago, I found Renee and her book, Winds of Spirit, and really changed me. It really helped me deepen into what's important to get more grounded, to realize how many tools and skills that I truly have, that you have, that we all are invited to use and to be energized by and refueled with and empowered by. And I've been a fire tender here with the I Am Winter Solstice Symposium for 5 years now. And so it's been just such a beautiful journey, again, life-changing. And at the time, I can't even explain this because looking back, I would never fully understand this, but I stepped away from shamanic practices for a while because I had first initially studied even and learned a lot from a dear Lakota woman and friend. And it's just such life support to sit in this work and to not just have spiritual time or shamanic time, but actually live it as an integrated experience and lifestyle. So I do shamanic work. Ceremony is one of my favorite things to do, to hold space for others in that way. I do a lot of altar work as well, which I'll mention a little bit more today. And I also am a Reiki Master. I am a tarot intuitive reader, and I work with people who are grieving. So I'm a grief coach, and I use numerology as well. And yes, as Renee said, I do make deluxe bath salts, which are meant to be very nourishing and very connected to the elements. So today, I am going to talk to you about integrating the elements for nourishment. And I want to share a couple of things with you briefly and then really get us more grounded. I have a few slides just to help us situate into some of the foundation of what I'm going to talk about today. And then I'm just going to face you like this just to share some things that were really coming through. When I'm invited to do any kind of talk or event, or even when I'm planning my own, something that I do very sincerely and humbly is I listen to spirit and I ask, what is my focus? And even when Renee had first put out the call and invitation to be a presenter this year for the I Am Symposium, I asked spirit, what am I talking about this year? Because I felt drawn to definitely be a part of it. And the elements just kept coming in. And maybe some of you can relate to this, but sometimes we kind of second guess those things. It's like pulling a tarot card or, getting a message and you think, is it that simple? Can it be this simple? And a couple things came in response from spirit that I just want to briefly share. And those include the fact that shamanism is built on these, what we might call or refer to as simple practices and beautiful practices. And I think the power is in simplicity. Whenever we overcomplicate things, that's, I think, where we get distracted. That's where the meaning is lost. So keeping it simple, keeping it elemental, keeping it very tied to nature and cycles is, I think, really where the power is. And the other thing that came in that I want to share in considering just my talk and what was all coming in to share with you today is that I was so intrigued by the fact that this other point came in, and that is some people I think will say, oh, the elements, yeah, been there, done that. Or, I had a neighbor once who said, "Oh, meditation, yeah, I'm advanced, or and I just chuckle, just smile inside, thinking what that says to me personally as Erika is that maybe you just need some refreshment with that practice because it is so necessary, right? Like meditation might be for some people, like the elements are for a lot of us, right? And so I just want to bring that in as we do get situated today. And I also just want to say, yes, I've also had a wind whistle and I have two wind whistles. And this beautiful Jaguar one I got several years ago. And Nick, I don't know why the nickname and name is this my golden beauty. And so I use this in a lot of ceremony, actually, but just wanted to have it close. And it's been on my winter solstice altar, which I'll also show a photo of later. But as we get started, I want to just have us pause for a moment and just really jump into showing you, and maybe this is your practice as well, of how the elements guide and open just about every ritual and ceremony that I do. And it always just is such a beautiful guide. And so just to further ground and just to further really have the intention of being present. How can you be here now, especially in this swirl, as I like to call it? There is so much going on, and I know that we all have our own version of that. I'm very aware that holiday season is here, having started in October with Diwali and just continuing with all these beautiful honorings of light. That's how I see these end of year holidays that we're in. And winter solstice beautifully just brings it all together in this sweet, this non-denominational, this universal, light-filled, love-filled way. So again, it's so beautiful to be here with you and to honor this space. So to be present, I think that is one of the best gifts we can give ourselves. And as I've said to many clients and students of mine, it is my priority and one of the best gifts that I can give to you. So let's get a little bit more present. So if it helps you, as it does for me often, is I love placing my hand over my heart. And for me, this is always a signal of I am here. And I invite you to just close your eyes. And as I like to just encourage you to find your deepest, slowest breath. I mean, really. And you're not probably going to get it in the first one. So take a few breaths. Your deepest, slowest breath is your intention. And as you are finding your breath, it's so perfect because I want to just honor air. And I often honor the elements as I honor directions. So I honor the east direction where we bless new beginnings, where we also just take this information in as something new and inspiring for yourself. We next honor the element of fire. Fire is being called in, I'm hearing, to help us all burn away to the distractions, transmute what's distracting into even more focus, and to also be a spark for, again, excitement about what we're talking about today and beyond. Next, I want to just invite us to honor water in the West for healing and for staying in flow. Because as I know with any presentation, any event, we just sometimes don't know what's going to happen and we hope for the best. And staying in flow is also what I'm doing, and just inviting water in to help us heal what might be heavy in our hearts right now. That soothing water. I invite us to consider beautiful earth, where we are grounded, where we honor our ancestors, our gemstone friends, nature beings. And we truly, truly call in our team of loved ones, wise ones, and light beings, perhaps the angelic realm for some of you, I'm hearing. And as we honor Father Sky and beautiful sun and moon and stars, the cosmos, as we honor Pachamama, beautiful Mama Earth, and we honor ourselves and within. This is truly the spirit of it all. So, with that beautiful breath that you continue, I want to situate us in the elements. And again, just looking at not just, oh, yeah, we know about the elements, but how do we really integrate them in a nourishing way, in an allyship, even perhaps? So, I want to just share a few slides to get us started, and then we will have further conversation from there. Okay. So I created this visual, and I know that we have all learned of the elements and we often know of the main four. We hear of air and fire and water and earth, and spirit has really become also essential And I'm going to explain this more, but I feel like spirit is in all of the main four elements, and spirit is what enlivens, spirit is what inspires and animates. And so we're going to talk about this a little bit more next. So on the next screen, I want to offer some perspective and some beautiful, gentle disclaimers. So I, as Erika Schreck here today with you, I lovingly and jokingly tell my clients and people and friends in my life that I am not the boss of you. And so that's a fun way to basically say that I honor your experience. If something I'm saying today does not resonate with your tradition, with so much respect in my heart, and for you, I'm just sharing my perspective, right? This is just how I have really developed my relationship with the elements and shamanic practices and spiritual tools. So I invite you to just take this in and to hold and to be inspired by what resonates, and to not necessarily be overly distracted by, what might not sit with you entirely, because that's okay, right? That's the beautiful thing in being in community, that we can listen to others and their stories, even if it's not our story or experience. So I just really humbly thank you for listening and for considering what I'm sharing. So, some initial perspective, just to again situate us. I wanted to share that with the air element, for me and in my tradition, and I actually note this at the bottom of this slide here, my tradition and training with direction and element correlation is what you're seeing as I talk now. And air for me is about breath. It's about the new beginnings. It's about life. I often say that we begin our life with our first breath and we end our life with our last. Air is very integral to keeping us going, right? And it is about the wind. And again, just really grateful for the Wind Clan and my experience and journey and learning with Renee and many other beautiful people that I've been able to share this space with and continue to share this space with and be connected to. That's such a gift. I want to mention fire. And for me, it is in the south direction. And this, for me, is about transmutation. And if you're not familiar with that term transmutation, it's just a beautiful reminder of changing form and changing form into something more positive. So, for example, if something is kind of icky or unpleasant or heavy in our bodies, we can use fire and perhaps intend that we want to bring in this beautiful aspect of power, that we can change something that happened to us, use our pain as our fuel, and actually take the lessons and leave the pain, right? And it's also about destruction. Fire, actually, any element can be destructive, right? But these are just some associations I personally have. And then passion. It can perhaps be a spark and an inspiration to keep the passion going. Speaking of, I'm going to give this fire a little love in a moment. So, water, the west direction for me, and it's often about healing and flow, playfulness, and clarity. And then earth, the north direction. So much wisdom and light. And also, our ancestors reside in the north. It's a time of winter, it's groundedness and growth. So, these are just some places that I want to start us today. And of course, we have spirit, which I want to talk a little bit more about. Spirit is often called space. When you really start looking at different traditions of the natural elements, sometimes people call the fifth element just space. And for me, I would see it and I know it exists, and spirit just comes in. It's like this is my guidance with this fifth element. And for me, I associate it with the above, below, and within directions. And I see it to include the cosmos, our wisdom within, Pachamama, essence, the impression that something or we make on others, animation, to give life to something, right? We have phrases in a lot of our cultures where we say, give it some spirit. We need some spirit, and there's a reason for that. And it's the non-physical, right? It's the non-tangible where a lot of, we can feel how tangible those first four and main elements truly are. Okay. So, just to bring that in, I want to then give you a little preview of where we're going next, how we integrate the elements for nourishment, and at least what I'm going to be talking about. And so the first one is visibility and accessibility. Again, I'm going to break all of these down and develop them. There's four. Your unique relationship with the elements, ritual and practice, and sample integrations. And again, integrating and integration, you're hearing me say a lot because something can just be sitting there, like the elements are so accessible and always there for us, right? And, just like it's like having a cool device, electronic device in your home, but you're just not using it. So how cool is it really, right? So just to acknowledge that, again, how you integrate, how you're actually using, acknowledging, honoring, maybe even calling on help from these elements, that's where the gold really is. Okay. So what I'm going to do next is just give my fire a little puff and see if it wants to come back with us because it is its own unique beauty. And so I am going to just put on the screen just so you can take a glance while I'm doing that at my winter solstice off altar this year. And you'll notice that I have some calligraphy, take time for nourishment in the back. And I had done some watercolors not that long ago. So take a peek, just notice. And I'm going to give you a little task. See if you can find my representations of the elements, because we're going to just talk about that briefly. Because one practice that I personally have is always having the four elements represented on just about every altar that I do. So take a moment to do that. Okay. So I'm not sure what you perhaps found, but of course, fire is I have three candles and I still have three candles on the altar that is next to me now with fresh candles because these were from last night. Um, I have earth and all of these beautiful gemstones. And actually these two right here, because the mouse is that I'm pointing to is here. My sweet dog Tobias, actually, who several of my Wind Clan beautiful connections knew, he transitioned last year, so about a year ago. So he had part Dalmatian in him. So this is Dalmatian Jasper. And a dear friend gifted me this beautiful, it's actually a huge rose quartz heart that I connect with him. I have feathers back here behind this beautiful bast kitty to represent air. And then there's actually a little gemstone bowl right here that has some water in it, right? And there's other things we could point out on here, but I just want to note those first. Okay. So I want to just, again, share some additional information and then also hopefully inspire you for integrating the elements a bit more. And one of my first of four points I want to make is this point about visibility and accessibility with the elements. So, what we want to remember or invited to remember is that the elements are clearly accessible when we step outside. And I don't know if you'd agree with that, right? And so they are so supportive, they are so tied to nature. And so accessing and connecting with the wind, the earth, right? Fire might not be actively happening outside, but we know how that can be created naturally and in our own choices. And then, of course, water, right? And the accessibility piece also, just like this is the reason I just showed you some things on my altar, are things that can be brought into our home. So you just saw that all the elements are represented. They have beautiful symbols, and in a creative way, you can bring the elements to your space. It could be on an altar. It could be just simply, in your space elsewhere. But what I want to say here as well about accessibility with the elements is they are always available to access, to meditate with, and to have within. Because a lot of us can imagine what fire does for us and for us and with us. We can imagine what air and water and earth are there to help us with. And so, just by that simple focus and intention of asking for help, right? Or wanting them to be reminders in our own space, there is always that available to you. Now, one thing I want to say is going outside is probably, again, the best way to keep in touch with our beautiful elements. And don't forget that you can not only have them in your home or other space, and don't forget that they are always here with you, right? We are water. We hear that a lot. Our fire can be the passion within us. Our air is clearly our breath, and our physical body and our grounding sensation is so tied to earth. So I give you that first to consider. My next point that I wanted to make today is around your unique relationship. So I have, a couple things to say here and stories. In a funny way, when I first say that your unique relationship with the elements, um, we know in our lives that some people are more nourishing for us, and the elements, personified, also, some of those can be more nourishing than others, right? And this leads into one of my stories with the wind. I have a lot of stories. In fact, when I was in the Wind Clan and part of the 10-month apprenticeship with Renee and others, her beautiful team, I was so intrigued by the fact that here I had joined the Wind Clan, right? And I had all these stories from my past where the wind I felt was to blame. Maybe I'll even venture to say that. And part of these things that I experienced. So one was I was a child and we lived actually kind of on this hill. It got very windy. It was in a rural area in Wisconsin, here in the States. And I was turning back to tell my mom something. I had opened our big heavy door to the garage, and this wind came and just my fingers got slammed, right? I can remember, things when the wind kind of came in and messed something up, or our hair, even whatever it was. And I'm laughing now because I realize that, elements sometimes need to get our attention, like that could be part of it. But also that, like a relationship with anything and anyone, relationships can change. And we can decide our boundaries with the relationship. We can deepen a relationship. We can learn new things in a relationship. And with the wind in particular, as an elemental journey for me, I love the wind. I love my wind whistle. I love helping people get into their breath. I love that wind as I, just use my bellows. If you don't know what bellows are, I had to tell a friend this will actually emit air, right? It's so beautiful. So another wind tool and air tool, right? So we can also see how the elements interact, how they have relationships, right? And in that same way, what I want to mention is that we can look at the relationship just like we might call a particular friend or family member because of something they uniquely can share with us, give us, teach us. So I do have a lot of fire, just attraction. I love having my fireplace. I also, as a redhead, as a natural red-haired being associated with fire, I'm an Aries, very cuspy, but I am an Aries. So there's a fire element, right? All these things come in. So you too might have those influences and be drawn to certain elements. So for me, even again, using the elements more as an ally in my unique relationship, sometimes I need to be sure that I am drinking enough water, that I, might need to take that bath, as Renee mentioned that she did recently, to water can help cool or even put out or dim the fire, right? We can think about those kinds of connections, what we need. And again, this is all in the spirit of using elements as nourishment, as providing more of what we might need, as being medicine. And don't you know, like, don't you love this? Like, fire is just so excited now behind us. It's a being. I really respect that. And here living in Colorado where it's very dry, we have had several very unfortunate fires, for example. So fire in some people's experience can be very scary and can be, just like water can be, associated with floods for people, wind can be hurricanes. And we have all these associations and relationships. And again, the invitation and what I'm just noticing and noting now is you get to decide how you're connected to it. Even if a fire has destroyed something, how is fire a teacher? How is fire still there to support you, right? So I'm just inviting you to have your relationship with things. Not everyone has a fireplace, and this is a very sweet thing for me. I love lighting candles, again, having fire around. Okay. So just to notice those examples. And also I'm a huge draw with earth energy too, because I love gemstones and rocks. And since I was a kid, I have always collected rocks. Maybe you have too. So the third point that I'd like to bring in today for us to consider is about ritual and practice. So, again, this is where you get to decide how you stay connected to, how you draw from these beautiful elements, and how you stay in touch, how they help you balance, and how they might also come into special occasions. So let me give you a couple of examples. Again, my ritual in general, as I mentioned earlier on purpose, is I love to have representation symbols of all four of the main elements and spirit. What makes this unique? The spirit of my deceased dog on this altar, or just meanings for other things that I have here as well. Some of these items were actually gifts from other people, in addition to what I mentioned with the gemstone heart. And that is a spirit of love to me as well, right? But my ritual is to stay connected. Another, thing that I notice, and maybe, with some of you traveling even right now, is the ritual of using the elements as life support, as medicine, as a way of getting grounded and staying connected to yourself when you're traveling, when you're in times that are fuller in your schedule, like the holidays. Okay. And even if there's something where you're really nervous, I remember very dear friend of mine, and I bring her up because she's been such an important part of my spiritual journey, my dear friend Aparna, who died a few years ago. And we had many conversations about elements. In fact, she, just would get so excited about how they would integrate. But what I wanted to say is, and bringing in this idea of having a ritual with the elements, is I was asked to speak at her funeral. And one of the things I did and noticed I needed was I connected with all of the elements before I walked into the building where the service was, because I was nervous. I was really sad. I was grieving, and I just needed to connect to something. And so I immediately just first, just to share this very in real, circumstances, I felt my feet on the ground and I just felt rooted and asked for that tree energy to just keep me grounded, keep me in my truth, keep me in my words that I had written. I then went to my breath, because I like to say the breath is the first to go, typically when we're panicked, when we're grieving, when we're angry, right? And so I really got my breath in check as much as I could in that moment. I suddenly felt some, also some air too around me, which felt good. And I asked that what was distracting me to just be blown away and off. I made sure that I had my water bottle because speaking, I wanted to make sure that I was not going to, lose my voice in the spirit of water, right? And I also just remembered the passion that Aparna always had for so many things in life and just brought her fire and her support in with me. Okay, so there is that. So, how you ritualize using the elements is completely up to you. And one thing I wanted to say is, every time we honor elements or, what I've just explained throughout today, you don't have to necessarily honor or use all of them all the time. Maybe one is really calling you and feels especially helpful as a helper in that moment or for a particular circumstance. So, lastly, I just want to really honor the idea of sample integrations of this work. And I just want to offer that if you have an intention and need to release something, there are so many things that I'm sure you do, and so many things you have as tools and practices. And what if you're not already doing this? What if you bring in one or more of the elements to help you? So sometimes, the elements will even act on their, being outside, that funeral home, for example, there was a wind that suddenly came in. And I thought, okay, thank you, Aparna. And I also, though, said to the wind, can you take away some of these nerves that I'm feeling right now? Right. But to actually have the intention and invite the energy to be with you and to support you. The idea of grounding, as well, that the elements can all ground us. We might immediately think of earth energy, but water can also be very grounding in that it might help wash away, again, distraction or what's keeping us ungrounded, right? So sometimes the wind feels very ungrounded, but maybe again it can help us stay focused because it's blowing away or off what we don't need and what's not pleasant in that time. So I just offer these things to other things to consider when I need to balance. And I've already talked about this, that I can have a lot of fire. In fact, if you know Ayurvedic work, I have a lot of pitta in me, which is very much a lot of fire. So I have to think about, again, how do I wish to balance? And the elements can do that. The elements can be about protection and also safety. And again, I just find that more and more coming back to these simple things, because I've been tested this week. I've had a lot of unexpected things as life, offers us a lot, it seems. And I realized that what I keep coming back to is help from the elements, and really learned long ago too. First, I learned this concept from Sandra Ingerman as well in one of the classes I was taking with her, that, see the elements as allies, see them as these friends, these supporters, these helpers, and how can they offer you gifts in a given moment for a situation on an altar? How can they support your intentions and your needs? So, mostly I wanted to bring awareness today because I find that, again, it's easy to forget about the simplest things. And sometimes we just need a refresh. I know that sometimes I actually challenge myself to think, how can I creatively, work with fire? And I'm actually wearing a fire agate in this necklace, right? That's another way. And just thinking about how, again, this integration can be a form and source of nourishment this time of year when we are invited to be more aligned with natural cycles. And the elements come up a lot, even in texts about the holy nights, which is also synonymous with this time of year. And people like Rudolf Steiner, for example, but other teachers who knew, even in pre-Christian times, that this sacred time of the winter solstice is all about nature. It's all about within. So I just want to say thank you for your attention today, your presence. And I just invite you to see what has inspired you today, what has sparked new kinds of things in you, like fire can help spark it. And how you take this forward is up to you. So I just want to say blessings on your journey, and a big thank you to you, Renee, for having me here and having all of us here. Appreciate you.
That was just so beautifully simple and so elegant, and such a great reminder that it's not the big complicated things we do. It's the everyday mundane rituals we bring into our own life, that we bring awareness to those rituals. So I really appreciate you, and I'm grateful for you. And for those watching this, just let's give her a bow.
Mm.
Thank you. And up next is another Wendy, Michelle Latinsky. Looking forward to that. And we also have one of our fan favorites, Lori Lothian from Lunatic Astrology, who we're so grateful she's coming this year because she's like taken way off on YouTube, like, 45,000 people watching her every single show. And like she's been here with me ever since we did the Next Top Spiritual Author, which was many 20 years we've been all working at this together. And who else I don't even know who else we have today, but we have a full day of a lot of fun and a lot more winter solstice magic to come. Stay with us, stay tuned, and keep doing these little simple rituals. I'm thinking, like, what do I have to put for fire around my neck?
Right.
Something that simple, like, I'm traveling this week, better pack my black rock. I'm going to need it.
Right. I take a lot of elements with me too. Yeah. Thank you, Renee.
So thank you so much for taking time and being here, because I know you've got your own ceremony going on. So really appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, and all people here listening later, here live.